Class 2 Chapter 8, Strategic Marketing Planning in Hospitality and Tourism. Setting strategic marketing planning process. Objectives are statements of where we want our organization to go. In strategic marketing planning, they should have an appropriate time scale, probably 3 to 5 years ahead, and be at an appropriate level of detail, i.e. not too precise. This is done at the operational level. Without objectives, plans become difficult to write. How does a planner decide what is needed without knowing what is to be achieved? Also the later stage of control, establishing whether what was achieved was what was planned, and if not, why not, similarly becomes unclear. The potential for complexity in setting strategic marketing objectives, SMOs, should not be underestimated. Organizations may have many stakeholders, all with their own desires as to the direction for the organization. Whilst, politically, all shareholders need to be considered, in doing so there is a danger that the strategist generates far too many objectives. Often these become mutually incompatible. For example, stakeholders with a financial interest may want a quick return on their funds invested, whilst managers are more concerned for their own long-term survival. The mission statement is made to benefit the organization by guiding and motivating staff. This could be defined as a general expression of the overriding premise of the organization, which ideally would be in line with the values or expectations of major stakeholders. This question of establishing organization purpose may be addressed by asking what business are we in? This approach has been common for many years, but the alluring simplicity of the question does not mean there is a simple answer, neither is the process of answering the question easy. Some organizations with many SBUs manage to produce a single mission statement that applies to all the units. Others find that the diversity of their SBUs is such that they require a separate mission for each. Common faults in producing mission statement include defining the business too widely. For example, we are in the leisure business. Imagine all the activities that might be construed as leisure. Defining the business too narrowly. For example, we are a coach operator. Coaches are not the only form of transport. Defining the mission in too complex a way, including every possible opportunity open to an organization. Such statement tends to be lengthy and often gives far too little focus to managers in their decision-making. From example of Holiday Inns Incorporated who, in the USA, widened its definition from being in the hotel businesses to the travel industry. Following this it bought Trailways Incorporated, a bus company, and Delta Steamship Lines. Unfortunately, the companies were so different from the original business that Holiday Inns were unable to run them successfully and they were subsequently sold off. Holiday Inns now define themselves as being in the hospitality businesses. An example of a good, succinct mission statement is that of British Airways, no date, which is to be the best and most successful company in the airline industry. Growth. Most organizations set themselves objectives of growth. Arguments for this are that it motivates staffs who wants to work for a stagnant or declining organization. Those financing the organization like growth. If it is growing they feel they will get returns on their investments. Care should be taken in not setting growth objectives high when there is no real possibility of such growth. It is debatable whether such plans do motivate. They may have the opposite effect of demoralizing staff. It could be argued that realism is better than unfounded optimism, and even planning to shrink is necessary on some occasions. Growth objectives are frequently expressed as growth in sales, sometimes as growth in market share. Less frequently they may be expressed as growth profits. Decision makers should recognize the differences between sales and share. For instance, in a declining market, it is possible to increase your market share whilst your sales still decline. Similarly, there is a difference in growth objectives set in terms of volume. For example, a ferry operator may wish to increase the number of passengers by 5%. The latter could be achieved by attracting customers from competitors. Finally, particularly for commercial organizations, perhaps more thought should be given to setting profit growth objectives. It can be a misconception by managers that growth in sales and or share equates to growth in profits. This is not necessarily so. Organizations can sell more by reducing price, but usually with a penalty for profits. It has been suggested already that growth objectives should be achieved. Similarly, the strategist should be sure that the organization will be able to cope with the level of planned growth. Growing too fast can inflict long-term damage on an organization by stretching its resources too far. In a few exceptional circumstances, an organization may be trying to slow down or prevent growth. For example, many nation parks are faced with a surfeit of visitors to honeypot location. In such situations, planners may attempt to protect this asset and plan to demark them, effectively planning negative growth. How to set strategic marketing objectives. To avoid the potential complexity identified at the start of this section, setting strategic marketing objectives can be simplified by answering the following questions. What business do we want to be in? What profit do we want to make? How fast do we want to grow? To answer the first question, essentially setting the mission statement, management looks, not just at what is currently supplied to current customers, but also at other markets that the product could satisfy. For instance, many university accommodation services are aware that their economical and functional residences, often marketed to the conference market, also appeal to other cost-conscious customers. This principle can be taken further by encouraging managers to ask, what needs do the services satisfy? What service do we supply? Following this advice, skiing holiday providers, for instance, might recognize that they satisfy the need of customers for exhilaration. Amongst others, this might lead them to offer mountain bike downhill racing. This satisfies the same need but with different technology, and incidentally overcomes the problem of poor snow conditions. Lastly, in asking what business do we want to be in, an organization might consider how it satisfies customer needs better than its competitors. So, if an organization's strength is that it is prepared to tailor package holidays to meet individual customer needs and does this better than the rest, this could be incorporated into its mission statement. In setting profit objectives, it is recognized that it is extremely difficult to gauge exactly what level of profit might be made. However, setting a minimum acceptable level is a sensible precaution. Thereafter, the needs of all the organizational stakeholders should be considered and balanced. For example, it may be necessary to forfeit short-term profit, possibly an expectation of investors, in order to gain market share, possibly the preferred objective of the management. The question of rate of growth should be carefully considered. Most people involved in organizations will probably want to see growth, but care should be taken in growing too fast. Similarly, managers need to be explicit about what it is they want to grow. It is usually sales, but do not forget this might be achieved at the expense of profit. Clearly, the organization's strategic marketing objectives can only be sensibly set with sound understanding of the organization abilities and in the light of its changing